Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on raising confident kids. We all want our kids to feel confident about themselves and about their ability to adapt and to meet challenges. So Dr. Rebecca Abbott-Sinclair, who is here with me, is going to talk about how to foster that confidence by finding more ways to increase kids' independence. I am Mandi White-Ajmani. I am the owner of Small Brooklyn Psychology. We are a group psychology practice at Industry City in Brooklyn, New York. And we offer therapy and neuropsychological assessment to people of all ages, all backgrounds, very important, and all psychological concerns. At the bottom of this slide, you can see the lineup of our amazing clinical team. So that's me, Natasha Brown, Rebecca Abbott-Sinclair, who's here today. She's our director of therapy. Sam Janit, Maddie Lawler, Nav Gill, Cecilia Barbosa, Megan Moxie, Caroline Carberry, um, Olga Fuller, Amira Hanna, and Danielle DeFilippo, who is our Associate Director of Neuropsychology. And we all have experience working with people across the lifespan, but we have special training and experience to work with children and parents using evidence-based assessment and treatment. A big goal at Small Brooklyn, I say this every time, but it's just so important. A big goal for me and for all our whole team is to be a resource to the community. So whether you are working directly with us or not, we really want to share what we know. We want to be able to provide the knowledge that we have, to offer suggestions, to make connections to providers. So one of the ways that we do this is through webinars. And we've had this amazing partnership with Park Slope Parents, who has been such a resource in the community. I know so many of you attending now are members, and so I know that you know how important this connection has been. I've been touched personally by Park Slope Parents. They've helped me so much, and then certainly professionally, and they've been a wonderful partner in helping us to get great information out to the community. So thank you to Park Slope Parents. Through this partnership, we have developed now quite a library of webinars, and they are all housed on our website at smallbrooklyn.com/services/talks, and they span a huge amount of different topics. From like, what's a neuropsychological evaluation? How do I manage my kid's meltdown? There's versions of that in at home and in the classroom and in groups. How do you help girls with ADHD? How do we co-regulate when our neurodivergent kids are shutting down? So many different things, and they are all available for free on our website, as well as you guys who are attending as a Park Slope member or through paying for this talk, but it's one of the ways that we help to get the message out. All right, so now we're going to turn to raising confident kids. So I'm joined today by Dr. Rebecca Abbott-Sinclair, who's going to lead this webinar. She has been working with anxious parents and kids for almost 10 years and has just such a pragmatic but like funny, relatable way of working with clients, and I just really love her approach. So thanks, Rebecca. Um, Rebecca Abbott-Sinclair, PhD. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, and she is our director of therapy. She specializes in evidence-based treatment with children, teens, adults, and families. She works with clients experiencing lots of different difficulties, emotional, social, behavioral, but she has a special focus in treating obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and other anxiety disorders across the lifespan. She's completed a very specialized training with the International OCD Foundation. It's called Behavioral Therapy Training Institute, BTTI. It's an intensive training program in exposure and response prevention for pediatric OCD. Rebecca has trained at St. John's Hospital, Bellevue Hospital, NYU's Child Study Center, and the Child and Family Institute. And then she led psychological services at Brooklyn Mines for several years. And then we were lucky enough to have her join us at Small Brooklyn in 2022. Rebecca has a particular interest in helping parents as well, ranging from addressing early childhood issues, improving behavioral difficulties at home, navigating childhood and adolescent anxiety, and she provides both parent-only sessions as well as interactive parent coaching. Rebecca also provides individual therapy to adults, parents, young adults, and she has a particular interest in perinatal health as well, mental health. Outside of work, she loves baking, cooking projects, doing all the New York Times games, and she has two young kids and a fur baby named Milo. And I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. And so I am going to shut off my video and let Rebecca talk, but I will be here monitoring the Q&A box the whole time. So if you have a question, please make sure to chat it to me. We will save some time at the end for questions from the audience, and take it away, Rebecca.
Thanks so much. Oh, it's fun hearing all that stuff by yourself and also a little anxiety provoking. So we're right here in it with you guys. Thanks so much for that introduction. Today we're going to talk about some of the methods for raising confident kids, including managing anxiety and encouraging independence. I will say, we got a lot of RSVPs. We got a lot of questions submitted even before starting this. So, depending on how it goes and feedback, maybe there are certain topics we want to deep dive into in future webinars, totally open to that kind of feedback. I'll also say, serious stuff. And we're going to try not be too serious. I'm going to try and make this a little bit fun, a little bit funny. And it's not because I'm not taking your anxiety seriously, but I'm doing it because anxiety hates humor. And so if anxiety hates humor, we're going to try and have some humor with it. So just know if I'm a little bit glib or whatever, it's because anxiety hates that. All right, so what are the goals for today? We're going to work on understanding parental anxiety. We're going to explore the impact of parental anxiety and overparenting and the overparenting trends, and also how that impacts our kids. And we're going to try and learn some evidence-based strategies to go along with it about fostering independence, about reducing our own anxiety, because those two things in combination, we're hoping, reduce anxiety in kids. And that's what we really want to do. All right, so let's start off with what is anxiety? I hope everybody saw Inside Out 2. They did a great job talking about anxiety. It starts with fear. Fear is a normal response to immediate danger. It's an alarm system in the body, right? It's the alarm going off saying something is wrong here. And we need it from an evolutionary perspective. If a tiger is coming up in the jungle, you want to run. You want your alarm system to go off. And that's where our fight, flight, or freeze response comes in, is that when their alarm system is going off, it's telling you to do something. It's telling you to get ready to fight the predator, run from the predator, or sometimes freeze, because sometimes freezing is an adaptive evolutionary response. When a bear's coming, you're supposed to freeze. You're supposed to shut down. That's better than running, right? And so all of these are adaptive responses to immediate danger. And that happens even in our modern world. That moment when you step off the sidewalk and a car comes zooming by and you feel that feeling that pulls you back and tells you to jump back, that's fear. That's fear saying, jump back, do something about this alarm. However, anxiety is related to fear and it's also separate. All animals experience fear. All of them have their amygdala, that's in the back of your brain, and that's your fear center. And it's the thing that tells you there's danger in the environment. Humans have this wonderful frontal lobe, of course, that has language and planning and executive function, and it lets us plan ahead for things. But it also means that the relationship between those means that we can plan for future fears. This is a good thing in a lot of ways. We want to be planning for future things that could happen. But anxiety becomes when we're planning for so many future fears. All right, so a little hard to play this interactive game because I'm talking to myself on this webinar, but think in your head for a second of what percentage of people you think have anxiety. Okay, it's a trick question. 100% of people have anxiety. Anxiety is a normal human emotion. I'll actually say 99.99999%. I've heard of case studies of people who don't experience anxiety because of neurological issues. But generally, anxiety is something everyone experiences, and it helps be a warning system about the things that might happen, and it motivates us to do certain things. I'm not gonna do my notes if I'm not worried about what might happen if I don't do my notes. That's good anxiety. But anxiety becomes problematic when it's excessive, when it's too much, it's responding to too many possible what ifs in the environment, it's persistent, it's coming up too often in daily life, and if it's interfering with daily functioning, if it's keeping people from being able to do the things they need to do in their day-to-day. So types of anxiety, not comprehensive, but trying to give a broad kind of understanding to it. So there's generalized anxiety, worrying about a wide range of different situations. Specific fears, sometimes that's specific phobias, but also being really specific of, one kind of thing that you're afraid of. Fear of failure, fear of harm, fear of judgment, all of those are more specific kinds of fears. And there's intrusive thoughts, thoughts that seem to pop in out of nowhere. Our brains are amazing and they're so creative and they come up with really good creative problem solving, but they also come up with a lot of creative what ifs. And sometimes we're able to dismiss them and say, well, that's weird, that's probably not going to happen. And sometimes they get stuck, getting stuck on those thoughts that pop in out of nowhere. And those can be intrusive, stuck thoughts. So anxiety has a big impact on our decision making and our behavior. So with the fight response, we might become angry when anxious or try to fix something right away. That's actually a fight response. If there's something where you're like, I have to get rid of this, that's a fight response. It's a call to action. Flight response, getting away from the scary thing or avoiding any situation where there might be potential danger. That's our flight response. Or freeze response, shutting down. We all know that moment where the anxiety is too much and we're just shut down. Or, if there's all these worries about the potential things that might happen based on a decision we have to make, we can get stuck in inaction and get stuck. And that's one of our freeze responses. So, what's parental anxiety? Again, broad strokes. But when we're thinking about it, we're thinking about excessive worry about a child's well being or their success, often leading to over control. Control is a way of trying to protect from future outcomes. That if we're having all these feared future outcomes, if there's a high level of anxiety about those what ifs, we're going to try and control the situation. We're going to try and do anything we can do to prevent those things. And so, why is parental anxiety on the rise? There's lots and lots of different reasons. I have this animated, but I'm going to put them all up at once because I think they're all connected. There's a big fear of failure right now. There's a big fear of doing the wrong thing. What if I say something this way and it's not the right way and that has some big bad outcome for my kid? There's a lot of societal pressure that's tied into that, whether it's macro of how people are going to see me overall as a parent, of how I'm going to be judged in a big, broad sweep in the future, to how's my mother-in-law looking at me, how's my kid's teacher looking at me, how's my partner looking at me as a parent, am I doing the right thing? And there's a lot of societal pressure to read the right books and do it the exact right way and all of that. A micro example I think of this is the good job wars. There's so much out there on saying good job to your kids, of if it's good, if it's bad, doing it the right way. And there's so much pressure of, oh my God, if I say good job to my kid the wrong way or too much, I'm going to cause some big, big bad in their future. Generally, it's going to be fine. A lot of this is about how it's going to be fine. You can say good job. It's okay. There's a lot of exposure to negative news. This has been on the rise for several decades, right? If it bleeds, it leads. What brings us in to the news, to local news? Big disasters, reports of all the bad things happening. Nobody's reporting on the kid who walked to school and got home. That's not an interesting news story. And so there's a lot of exposure to negative news as we're in the 24-hour news cycle. And now that it's in the palm of our hands all the time, right? Whether it's news alerts or your newspaper app or Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff about all the bad things that can happen. We're getting a lot of information about that all the time. And if you're getting that information all the time, it's making it seem much more probable that those bad things are going to happen. Whether it's the big, big bads of kidnapping kind of stuff happening to kids, you're getting that information all the time, to kids having mental health crisis stuff. We're getting that information all the time. We're trying to protect our kids from it. That's why you guys are here, except we're going to make it okay. And I think a lot of that is tying into social media. I'm a Luddite. I'm kind of anti-social media. I'm also on it, so I'm kind of a hypocrite. Take all of that with that filter in mind. But a lot of social media stuff is creating unrealistic cultural standards for parenting. There's a lot about how if you don't do it this way, then this, and we're getting fed that. If you're on Instagram, Instagram knows you're a parent and they're sending you that stuff because they know you're going to stop and watch. And the stuff that seems really, really bad is going to be the stuff that gets a lot of views, even if it's roll your eyes kind of view, and it's going to get magnified, and then it becomes more real and seems more likely. And with it, we're getting so many sources with conflicting information. It's so hard to know what to do and to be in those what if scenarios if you're hearing lots and lots of different things about how to approach a basic parenting scenario. So there's a lot of that means one of your first steps in managing parental anxiety is normalize that you're having it. Of course I'm having it. I'm in this. We're all in this, that we're getting bombarded with that stuff. That's where it's coming from. So normalize that anxiety. So how does it have an impact on parenting? One of the big things is overprotectiveness and micromanaging. So an example might be, if you're afraid of your kid getting ostracized, of course you're going to follow them around during play dates and make sure that they won't be ostracized. That seems like a big scary outcome, that if they're ostracized, what's that going to mean about their future development? I got to go follow them around on play dates and make sure it's okay, make sure they're using their good social skills, got to make sure it's okay. We do a lot of avoidance of risk taking or of failure, and kind of with that risk of distress. So if you're afraid of your kid getting hurt, you're not going to let them climb on the playground. My kid fell off of playground equipment once, and a parent came up to me and said, "You should have been watching them." And I'm like, "I was watching them, but like also they fell. Like that happens." But if we're afraid of that, if we're afraid of them getting hurt, or even afraid of being judged them getting hurt, we're not going to let them climb. We're not going to let them climb on that thing that might be slightly outside their zone. It might happen. And so we're not going to let them climb, and they're not going to develop those climbing skills. And we're also doing some modeling of anxious behavior for our kids. So, for example, if a parental fear is a fear about them getting lost, we're going to check their location all the time. We're going to make them text us all the time. We're going to discuss danger constantly. We're going to ask them 45 times if they still have the note in their pocket with our phone number. And we're sending the message, this is a really dangerous situation you're about to walk into. You have to be on the alert all the time. And that can really increase their anxiety. So fear-driven parenting. So fear and anxiety are really important motivators, and they can be, signals to take action, and we want them. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to manage them. So we want to think about fears that can be discrete signals in parenting. What's something that's a discrete signal? I got to take action right now. When your kid comes in and they say, "Ugh, it really hurts to swallow," have an anxious reaction. Okay, they might have strep, they might have COVID. I got to take them to the doctor. That's a discrete moment that signals I have to do something right now. But thinking also, what's the fear that drives parenting? What's a fear that's overall, that's persistent, that's going on all the time, that's leading me to make all different kinds of decisions in parenting, or guiding how I'm acting during these moments, right? And some of the common ones: fear of failure again, fear of I'm going to do it wrong and something bad's going to happen, fear of judgment, that jerk on the playground is going to say something to me and that's going to feel really bad. And if they said it to me, does that mean I am a bad parent? Fear of long-term impacts. If I do it the wrong way, if I don't completely not mention food when I'm trying to get my kid to eat dinner, are they going to be a picky eater forever? And that's a minor one of like, if I don't handle this the right way, is my kid going to be a sociopath? Oh, where did my screen go? Sorry. I must have pressed something bad on my computer. Okay, I hope I'm back. If I'm not back, Mandy, please come tell me that my screen is not back.
You're back. It's all good.
Cool, good. See, things go wrong. We all handle it.
Managing
Um,
anxiety.
Fear of immediate disasters, right? Of like thinking about those big bad news stories of the scary stuff, kidnapping, kids getting hurt, all of that, of that's driving all these different parenting decisions. So becoming aware of what fears might be driving our parenting. A book that's gotten a lot of attention that I think really does a great job on this is The Anxious Generation. I know that it's been everywhere. Again, I'm on the social media, even though I hate it. And so I know it's gotten a lot of attention on social media, is The Anxious Generation. And it's gotten a lot of attention in terms of what it talks about in terms of screens and social media mental health, which I'm a believer in, but that's a talk for another day. The other part that it really talks about that I think is part of what's driving towards the phone-based childhood for a lot of our kids is this rise in parental anxiety and overprotectiveness, is that overprotective parenting leads to a lack of childhood autonomy. That what it talks about in the book a lot is that an increased rate of anxiety in children and teens is due to this lack of autonomy, that we're so scared that we're taking away these opportunities to build autonomy and build independence, and that we're giving kids less unsupervised play because of all the risk involved in it, and they're getting less opportunity for developmentally appropriate risks and practice. And so studies are showing that overprotective parenting correlates with higher social anxiety in children, because they're missing that opportunity to develop self-confidence and problem-solving skills through social failure. We're protecting them from social failure and making them afraid of social failure. They have to have it to build up those skills to manage these things. So what are the types of overparenting? We have helicopter parenting, which is constantly monitoring and intervening. I think this is the one that both gets joked about and we all have to kind of admit to, right? Like a parent who hovers over all the homework assignments and corrects the mistakes before a child can even do it and talks them through every step before the child can even try all these steps. And, you know, we're all a little bit helicopter, right? Like I have some hints of this, as Mandy knows. My son is currently myopically obsessed with chess. I have to leave the room when he plays because I want to jump in at every moment and go, not that move. No, 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 you're going to get killed. And it's a chess game. It does not matter. And yet I can't stop myself from trying to hover and correct every potential mistake to make sure he has success. I got to leave the room. I got that helicopter chess mom in me. There's also snowplow parenting. And I think the difference between helicopter parenting and snowplow parenting is that with helicopter parenting, it's making sure that they're going to succeed at every moment. Snowplow parenting is about clearing all obstacles in their path, being the snowplow. And a really big part of it is clearing the path so they don't have to experience distress, right? That it's so painful when our kids experience distress. We want to make it all better. Let me clear the obstacle so it can be okay. So an example of that might be calling teachers to request grade changes or intervening in minor peer disputes. So we're just trying to clear the path, making sure that they don't have to struggle, making sure that they don't have to feel that distress of struggle. Struggle's hard. It feels bad. Again, remember, anxiety is an alarm system. If alarm systems were pleasant, we wouldn't do anything about them. That distress that they feel is really unpleasant. And if they're feeling it, we're feeling it. We're reflecting them. They're our kids. We love them. We feel their pain. That's not enmeshment. That's evolution. We feel their pain. And yet the drive to say, let me make sure you don't feel that, we snowplow and we don't give them a chance to figure it out, to feel the pain, to get through the distress. Because both of these styles send the message, you can't do this without me, which undermines confidence and fosters dependence. And I'll say this again on the note of parent anxiety side. Everyone's got a little bit of this in them. I'm talking about this in a very general way, but I don't think anybody is 100% helicopter or 100% snowplow. And I don't think there's a parent out there who is 0% helicopter or 0% snowplow. We have to recognize that we're going to have moments of this, but also recognizing how much am I doing this and can I still step back? Forgive yourself. You're going to do it. Everyone does it. But also, can I keep moving? Can I keep moving in a direction that's more about fostering independence and confidence? So have a little bit of compassion and growth at the same time. So what's the impact on development of these things? We know it's going to reduce problem solving skills because we can teach kids about problem solving skills all day long, but that's academic. They have to be in it and they have to do it. So, what we can see with parents who are going to jump in and solve every problem or snowplow is, a child trying to work on a challenging puzzle is going to avoid it or demand that their parent help do it for them, demand a parent do it for them because they can't possibly handle it. They're going to have difficulty with managing failure or disappointment. So, an example might be a teen who panics after receiving a low grade because they've never received any critical feedback before because we've tried to snowplow it out for them. And all of that leads to an increased risk for anxiety and depression. So overprotected kids might feel unprepared to handle real world challenges, which leads to heightened stress and feelings of inadequacy. I've never had to do this before. I don't know how to do it. That's a feeling of helplessness. And helplessness is one of the cornerstones of depression. And I've never had to do this before. It's all new. Facing that uncertainty is a big part of anxiety. Now, again, parental anxiety note, this is all based on probability. Don't think like, oh my God, I've snowplowed for my parent and now my kid, and now they're never going to be able to develop problem solving skills. Remember when we're talking about all of this, we're talking about probability and risk. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing says like you've done this and therefore your kid is going to be screwed up forever. We're talking about risk factors and how to increase the chances for better confidence and better independence and autonomy. Okay. So another great resource to be thinking about this is the Let Grow movement. This was founded by Lenore Skenazy, who wrote Free Range Kids, and a bunch of other people who I don't remember right now, but it's all really good. So what's the Let Grow movement? It's a movement that advocates for creating opportunities where children engage in unstructured play, take risks, and develop independence through age-appropriate challenges. Some of the key initiatives. So Let Grow projects. Assigning kids independence projects like walking to a local store by themselves, preparing a simple meal by themselves, organizing a play date by themselves. I'm going to say by themselves like 5 more times to make a point. But a lot of this is about letting kids do it without parental involvement, showing them, not just telling them that they can do it, but showing them that we believe that they can handle this and handle the setbacks by really stepping out of the room for it, really stepping away and letting them handle it. Free play programs, another big key initiative is that encouraging schools and communities to support supervised but child-led free play sessions. It's a little counterintuitive, but there's that playground on Governor's Island that really does advocate for this, where it's really child-based. Parents are not part of it, and it's really about kids going to have unstructured fun. I know it's in a set place where we grown-up set it up, but it's hard to find unstructured play situations these days, so we got to find them where we can. Incremental independence tasks. So, allowing kids to ride bikes to a nearby park themselves, or managing their allowance without interference, including when they spend all their money at the vending machine instead of saving up for their Chuck E. Cheese trip that they've been saving up for months and are never going to get there because they're spending it all in the vending machine. That's my son again. He's lovely. Independence therapy. So, with the free range movement of Lenore Skenazy and the Let Grow project, there's been a lot of push about giving our kids more unstructured time and giving them these tasks of independence as a way to grow autonomy and grow resilience. And Camila Ortiz has also designed this therapy called independence therapy that we're actually getting some evidence backing on, because this is a treatment that they're doing research studies on and showing really good promise in terms of using independence therapy, not just in a preventative way of building strong kids, but actually to treat kids who have anxiety disorders. And we're seeing really good results from it. So what it is it's helping parents identify areas where they can step back in order to foster autonomy. And we have some tools for gradually increasing a child's responsibility in their independence. So the gradual release model, encouraging children to take on tasks with minimal support over time. So if your kid wants to scramble an egg, don't just be like, here's the egg and frying pan, good luck. Maybe you start with helping them stir the egg, doing it with them, and stepping back over time until they're able to do it themselves. Decision-making practice, allowing kids to make low-stakes decisions, choosing their outfit, planning an activity, even if it's going to fail. They're going to be cold sometimes without their coat. That's okay. They're cold, not freezing. They might say they're freezing. They are not dying of frostbite. They're cold. And to experience those natural consequences, right? Permitting children to learn from mistakes in safe settings. I kind of wish I'd taken out the word safe settings in there. Just letting children learn from mistakes. Let them forget their homework. They're going to forget their homework. If you drive their homework to their school because they forgot it, they have no reason to remember it tomorrow. You will rescue them from it. Let them forget their homework. Let the teacher reprimand them. Let the teacher mark it down, mark the grade down. They will learn. And all of this is to focus on empowering children to feel competent and capable by giving them these opportunities to manage age-appropriate responsibilities. So what are the effects of independence? Children who experience autonomy develop better coping and problem-solving skills, and autonomy strengthens self-efficacy. That's the belief in your ability to handle stuff and lowering anxiety rates. Okay, sounds great in theory, and it can bring up our own parental anxiety because we're worried about our kids, of course. So how are we going to manage our anxiety in these moments? Expect it. Expect your anxiety to show up. Don't think, I'm just going to be calm and cool as a cucumber and nothing will bother me. No, if you were calm and cool as a cucumber, you'd already be doing these things. Instead of wanting your anxiety to not show up in these moments or think I have to get rid of it, expect it. Expecting anxiety is such a powerful tool. Because when the alarm goes off, you want to know it's not an emergency. If you're not expecting your anxiety to go off and it goes off, wait, my anxiety is going off. Does that mean this is danger? Right? When the alarm goes off and you're not expecting it, it might be a fire. If you know there's going to be a fire drill and the fire alarm goes off, I mean, you still have to leave the building, but you know it's not an emergency. So you got to say to yourself, yep, there's my anxiety. I expected it because we're doing a new thing that I'm kind of scared of. Of course it's showing up. I can feel my heart beating. I know that that's my anxiety. I knew she was coming today. Recognize your triggers. Asking yourself, reflecting beforehand, What's making me feel overprotective, over involved? What am I worried about? Use calming strategies, not to get rid of your anxiety, because we're expecting it. If we try to use a relaxation thing to get rid of our anxiety, you're like, it's still there, that means it's an emergency. We're not using calming strategies to get rid of anxiety. We're using it to just turn the temperature down. There is really good evidence base that using calming strategies just turns the temperature down on our anxiety so we can use other skills. Deep breathing, again, a million conflicting sources of information on deep breathing out there: box breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, 5-4-2 breathing. I don't even know all of them. None of that matters. Don't hyperventilate. Don't breathe really fast. Other than that, just pay attention to your breath for 5 breaths. That's what you got to do for 5 breathing, is just bring your attention to your breath, and that can bring grounding to you, which is bringing you out of the future of imagining all those worst case scenarios to, I'm right here, I'm in the present. And that can really do a lot in terms of turning your temperature down. Reframe your fears. What's the worst that could happen? Sometimes answering that can be really helpful, because a lot of times it's, okay, like, my kid's gonna fall down on their bike if I let them ride off. Okay, like, they're gonna get scraped knee, I can handle that. Also ask yourself, what's the best thing that could happen? We spend a lot of time in what if land of all the bad things because that's primed in our brains and that's what our brains do. But really say, what's the best outcome of this? What could go really well? What about those what ifs? And self-validate. It makes sense that this is scary. Both my kid and I can handle this. Remind yourself of that. You will get through this. Anxiety ebbs and flows. I can handle this. My kid can handle this. We can handle this. So in terms of encouraging independence, what we can do in kind of practical ways, assigning those age-appropriate tasks like making their bed or walking the dog. You know, your 2-year-old, maybe you're not going to assign walking the dog. Your 10-year-old, you're going to assign walking the dog. 15-year-old, let's make something a little bit more difficult for them. They can probably handle more than that. What we want to do is find the working zone for them and for you. So what's the working zone? It's a place that's a little bit uncomfortable for them and for you. Sometimes it's more you than them. I talk about often kind of a green, yellow, red system. Red system is like, way too scary, that's flooding, never gonna happen. Green is, it's way too easy, right? I'm already doing this. So, you know, if you have your 14-year-old who's already walking the dog and you say, well, I'll have her walk the dog every day. Okay, she's already doing that. It's a little too boring. What's yellow? What's a little more uncomfortable for them and you? What's pushing towards growth? Create opportunities for problem solving. So really encouraging kids to resolve those minor conflicts or mistakes independently. That for all of this, failure is likely. Failure is good. We want to remember that failure is good, but we also don't want to rescue from failure. We want part of this to say like, okay, and like, what can you do in that moment? How can you handle it when there's a mistake? If you do get lost, how do you find your way out of that? We want to view those failures as opportunity for growth and learning. You know, when you think about this, I think of a teen who gave me a permission to share the story. So I have a teen I've worked with who has ADHD and anxiety, and they've said to me, you know, isn't it so funny that I'm the only one of my friends who knows how the subway works? Like, I know where all the lines go, I know the transfers, I know how to get anywhere on that. I'm the only one who knows. And I looked at them and I said, of course you're the only one that knows. Your ADHD is so bad that you have literally never remembered to charge your phone overnight. And they laughed because it's true. They never remembered to charge their phone, so they've had to figure out the subway a bunch of times, and now they're the only one that knows. That's failure, and it's growth from failure. We can use the scaffolding approach too in terms of building up this independence with different tasks. So scaffolding means first demonstrating a task. So, you know, if I want my kid to learn how to tie their shoes, and I just say, independence project for you. You're going to tie your shoes that week. Well, I'm going to be staring at them for a very long time because they don't know. So we want to think about scaffolding. We demonstrate the task. We do it together. Assist them with trying it. Step back and letting them do it independently. Come up with tying shoes, scrambling an egg, right? Like, don't just let your kid scramble an egg if they've literally never touched the stove before. Do it with them, show them how to do it, step back with assistance, assist them with it, and then leave the room. Maybe the first time you don't leave the room, maybe you're still in the kitchen, but don't reach out and rescue. Let them fail at it. Let the eggs be salty and gross and fall out of the pan. That's part of learning. So a family activity can be to design a let grow project where they choose a new skill or a new responsibility to take on over the next month and kind of think about a way to do it. I bet everybody's thinking, well, what's the one for my kid? I don't know. I don't know your kid's age or anything about it. And so we got to think about how to come up with it creatively. I'm a Luddite and I think screens are bad for our mental health, but I will say ChatGPT is really good at coming up with ideas for let grow projects. You can put an age and you can tell it to adjust it to make it easier or harder. You can come up with kind of step-by-step plans. So a little plug for the robots that are taking over our lives. ChatGPT can really help come up with a great let grow project. All right, common concerns. This is where I'm going to, again, try to read minds and imagine the anxiety that's coming up right now and could come up in the future as you're thinking about this. What if my kid can't do it? Maybe not. Maybe they can't. That's okay. Remember, failing builds resilience. Also, they need to fail to build any skill. And a big part is being supportive during that, of reminding them that they got through it, that they did a great job, even when distressed. Like, yeah, you got really upset during it. It is really hard to fail. And like, look, you're getting through it. You're surviving it. It's okay. Everyone feels that way. What if my child's anxiety gets too bad? What if they get really overwhelmed? It happens. Remember, anxiety ebbs and flows. Some days their anxiety is going to be really, really high, and some days it won't. Focus on attending to any baby steps that they're taking while feeling anxious. What we want to avoid generally is sending messages of like, okay, once you're not anxious about it, then we'll do it. It's going to get backwards, right? Because if we're waiting for them to not get anxious about a thing, then maybe they'll never not be anxious about it because they've never approached it. So we really want to focus on like, you can do this while feeling anxious about it. We don't have to wait for the anxiety to go away. We can do a lot while anxious. I'm anxious about public speaking. Here I am, right? That once you start, the anticipatory anxiety can fade a lot. And so it's a lot of that anticipatory anxiety too. What can you do while worried about it? Normalize the anxiety. Of course you're nervous about this. It's new. A lot of people get nervous about new things. That's normal. We're expecting it. Remember, expecting anxiety is a really powerful tool because if we're expecting it, it's not an emergency. All right, big scary. But what if something bad does happen? That's always going to be a what if. That's primed in our brains from the news and the negative news cycles and how our brains are primed to take on the scariest things. Remember, anxiety's big job is taking the unlikely and making it seem inevitable. The bigger, badder the what if, the more our anxiety makes us sure that that is going to happen. It's the reason people are more afraid of plane crashes than they are car crashes. Plane crashes are incredibly unlikely, but they seem really bad. Like, right? Like, I do not want to be in a plane crash. That seems very, very bad. But if you have anxiety, it makes it seem so likely because of how bad it is. Car crashes, very likely. We get in cars every day because it doesn't seem that bad most of the time. And I bet some of you thinking, okay, but there were 2 plane crashes in the news in the last week or two. That's true. How many plane rides were not in the news because they just landed normally, right? That a big piece of it is asking, how likely is this? How unlikely is this? This is my reminder. Kidnapping rates have not changed since the 70s. Kidnapping by stranger is so unlikely that when I was trying to look up some stats to share for reassurance for this webinar, it was so unlikely that I couldn't come up with a number to share because it was such an anomaly. That's how unlikely kidnapping by strangers are, even though the news cycles would want us to believe otherwise. Also, for a lot of our worst case scenarios, answer the question. Answer it. Okay, well, like, what if my kid does get hurt? Answer the question. If they fall, we're going to go to the doctor. If they break their arm, they're going to get a cast. If they fail a test, well, we'll figure it out. A big answer sometimes is, that's a problem I will be able to figure out if it comes. I believe in my own capabilities. I have really good problem solving abilities. I've made it all the way to adulthood. I'm a parent now. I will figure it out if it comes. Because we got to remember, building resilience is balanced with allowing for risk taking. I could tell you how to avoid all risks, but it involves keeping your kid inside a bubble like that episode from Seinfeld, and I don't think we want to do that, right? That's the only way of protecting from risk entirely is hiding away in our underground bunker. I don't recommend that for mental health. We want to have exposure to risk for us and for them. Remember, just like we need to be exposed to microbes to build a strong immune system, kids need exposure to challenges, risks, and failure to develop emotional resilience. And so do we as parents. Overprotecting them is over sanitizing their environment. It weakens their ability to handle stress. And it also weakens it for us because we think, oh, I can't handle it if my kid gets upset. I can't handle it about how upset I get if they get upset. We got to have that exposure for ourselves, that exposure to the anxiety and our kid coming back from the other aisle in the grocery store and being so proud of themselves for going to get something for us. We have to have that moment, including the anxiety moment. We have to stop victim blaming. We have to stop victim blaming ourselves and other parents. So, a little background on it. So, there's this thing called the just world fallacy that we all hold, even if we're aware of it and talk about it in therapy a lot. And it's this idea we have that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And that's a thought that generally keeps us safe. And what I mean by safe is emotionally safe, is that when something bad happens, it's like, okay, well, there's got to be a reason for it. And that idea of trying to find a reason for bad things happening is what leads to victim blaming. And we learned a lot about that in terms of, issues of sexual assault and how we don't blame victims anymore. And yet we're blaming parents all the time. We're trying to find reasons for the bad things that make us feel unsafe. That should say unsafe. I added this slide this morning. Apologies. And that, when we're trying to find those bad reasons, we're going to go to the most available source, which is, where are the parents? What did they do? I would never let this happen because that's a way of making you feel safe. Where were her parents? It's a way of making us feel safe, is that if something bad happens, it must be because the parents didn't protect them enough. But things happen even when we do everything we can. Also, a lot of bad things never happen that we're protecting from. So sometimes I, joke, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. We can't plan for everything. And the only way we can is keeping ourselves in a bubble or bunker. And I don't recommend that because we want to take risk and we want to know that we can handle most risk. And the biggest, scariest big risks are incredibly unlikely. So some baby steps. Stop checking. Stop checking on your kids. Not saying like never talk to your kids again, but in general, there's a lot of checking in our culture that's been really, really normalized. Checking makes us feel safe, but it has negative effects, particularly on parental anxiety. And it starts really early on. Owlets and smart monitors. Oh, the owlet. People love the owlet. For those of you who don't know, who maybe had kids after the owlet was invented and marketed really harshly to all of us, but it's a little ankle monitor that you attach to your baby's ankle to monitor its heart rate to protect from SIDS. It has no evidence base of protecting against SIDS, but what it does is it sends you an alert on your phone every time something happens to your baby in the crib. What a great way to disrupt your sleep that you need desperately to protect your mental health when you have a newborn. And it has a really, 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 really high rate of false positives to it. And so you're constantly thinking something's going wrong. This is not good for you or your baby. Just highly, highly don't recommend that. We have location services that are everywhere these days, on us, on them. Spying. I just gotta go see what my kid's doing over there on that play date. I can't not look. Great assignment monitoring. Oh, how the schools send us every single update on every single thing right to our smartphones, and we're getting checks on our kid all the time, and how easy it is to be like, how's my kid doing? Making us feel more anxious. Texting our kids. Texting is a great tool, but text me when you get there. Text me when you're leaving. Make sure you text me this, and this, tell me everything, right? We're doing a lot of checking and we're sending messages of, I don't trust this world, I don't trust this community, I don't trust your setting, and I don't trust you. So I'm not saying you can never text your kid. but thinking about how frequently am I doing it? Am I doing it every time I feel anxious? And is that scratching the mosquito bite of my own anxiety? Am I scratching the itch, but then another anxiety comes up and I have to ask my kid again, like, text me again, right? So thinking about how do we cut back on checking at least? Can you make rules about how often you're monitoring these systems? I've talked to parents who really do, when they get alerts about their kids' grades, frequently make a rule of, I'm going to look once a week. Looking every day and seeing those ups and downs and everything that's happening, it's too much for the anxiety. Can we cut back at least? Right, how much time do I have? Okay, I still have a little bit. Okay, here's reassurance time. Reassurance for parents. Children are resilient. Resilience is built through experience. Facing disappointment, limits, failure helps children to learn, to adapt, and grow. Remember, there's a lot out there on trauma. Let's talk about what trauma is and what it isn't. Trauma involves events that overwhelm their capacity to cope. Not everyday challenges like not getting their way or experiencing frustration or even you yelling, right? There's a lot of stuff of like, if you yell at your kids, their whole system shuts down and that's trauma. That's not trauma. There's real trauma out there of really big, bad, scary, dangerous situations, but most things are not trauma. Things can be hard, things can be distressing. Most things are not trauma. Kids are resilient. Kids bounce back. Parent-child relationships bounce back from yelling. It's not as big of a deal as we make it seem a lot of the time. A child not being invited to a party is disappointing, but it's not traumatic. It's an opportunity to build coping skills. It's an opportunity to feel distress and to get through it. Children are more capable of bouncing back than we often assume. They need these opportunities to struggle and recover to build resilience, not just struggle with failing on things, but struggling with the distress of failure. But anxiety makes things feel like an emergency. The alarm's going off. And so my kid going through this, it's causing my anxiety. It must be really bad. It must be trauma. It must be an emergency. Treat it like a common, normal experience. My clients out there who are watching this are going to be probably bored of me saying this over and over. It's not breaking news. It's the weather. If we treat anxiety in these moments of failure, things going wrong, as breaking news, oh my God, what's happened? What are we going to do? We're telling them it's an emergency. Treat it like the weather. Okay, it's going to snow. I got to be prepared. I got to make sure that my kid's snow boots still fit, but it's not an emergency. It's something I might have to do something for, but I don't have to act like it's breaking news. So, when anxiety spikes during these moments, we want to repeat some reminders that help us. Here are some ideas, but you can come up with your own. My child will recover. This isn't forever. This is a phase. Mistakes are how we learn. Letting go shows love and trust. So, if any of these hit for you, if there's some other way that you can remind yourself of this, that distress is okay, that feeling this is okay, that they're more capable than we believe, write down a sticky note. Depending on your kid's age and how often they steal your phone, you can even write on a sticky note, take a picture of it, and make it your background for a little while. It's a really good way of having that reminder during it. Remember, children who experience autonomy develop better coping and problem-solving skills, and autonomy strengthens our self-efficacy and lowers anxiety rates. Remember, you just got to be good enough. So, what's good enough? There's so much pressure to be perfect and do the right thing. We got to remember the good enough parent. So the good enough parent comes from attachment theory and from Winnicott, who wrote in like the 1950s. He called it the good enough mother. We got to know it's the good enough parent. So attachment theory is basically how when we attend to our infant's needs, that shows them that we are reliable people that they can trust. It's the formation of our relationship with them. And it becomes the model of how they see relationships in the world and how they explore their world. Like, I know my attachment figure generally takes care of me, therefore I can feel safe enough to explore this playground. All good. Been co-opted, and people think attachment means having to attend to every single need when they're a baby to build the best attachment. What we know is that actually parents who are over attentive to needs when in infancy, the parents who make sure they respond to every single cry without any hesitation, without any waiting time, actually are modeling the world's not safe, your feelings aren't safe, I got to protect you from those feelings. And that actually can lead to insecurity and attachment. What do we know about what a good enough parent is? 50%. in those infant years, you got to respond to 50% of the cries. That's the minimum. Like, I don't even know if that's minimum. That's a range. It's a number that, like, when you're thinking about how often you respond to your baby, I don't respond to all my baby's cries, right? You only need about 50%. And I think about that, that's our theory in terms of infancy and attachment theory. But thinking about it for older kids, I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to model perfection. I want to model being good enough, generally responsive, not always, not perfect. And I think that that can be a really helpful reminder when facing this anxiety is that I don't need to be perfect. I just want to be good enough. So, what's good enough? Generally be responsive, generally make some mistakes, right? Like yelling. I tell parents all the time I'm working with, like, we don't want to yell at our kids because it's not that helpful. It's not that helpful because it models yelling. And also, it's not that helpful because we don't want kids to only respond when we're yelling. We want them to respond to our normal tone of voice. And yet I yell. I think I yelled at my daughter this morning. I don't even remember. But like, we all make mistakes and it's okay. We all don't use those perfect scripts we get from Instagram. It's okay. It will be fine. Have emotions you don't handle perfectly. You are not going to always use perfect coping skills. That's okay. You are modeling that you're not perfect and that there's no reason to aspire to be perfect and use all your perfect SEL skills. Repair without ruminating. Again, there's a lot. I'm trying to respond to all the social media frenzy on these things. There's a lot about repair with your kids. You don't have to do a crazy giant repair every time you make a mistake with your kids or yell or whatever. You don't have to hang yourself to the cross when you yell. You just be like, oh, I yelled. I'm sorry. That's fine. You don't have to ruminate on it. You don't have to give us a big speech about how mommy's working on it, daddy's working on it. I'm really sorry if you felt scared. It can be much briefer than that. It can be not a big deal. Break the should rules, including all the ones I'm giving you. Take it all with a grain of salt. There's so much information out there. Do stuff wrong. Be okay that you're doing stuff wrong. It happens. Everybody can take these, and it doesn't mean that you have to follow this one philosophy perfectly. No, you're going to break the rules sometimes. You know your kid. Managing your anxiety. Limit your research. If you put any symptom with any medication into Google, you're going to get a result. Google is always going to give you more information and more options. Pick one source, pick one direction. I'm kind of contradicting myself about break the should rules, but in general, if you're trying something, don't try and pull from 1,000 different sources. Say, I'm going to try this because I heard this. I'm going to see how it works. Because endless information, whether it's through Dr. Google or through social media, means endless possibilities, which means endless doubting and what ifs and getting stuck. Pick a direction. Try it and see. See, because remember, it might fail. That's okay. Because everything is repairable. It's from Marsha Linehan, who's a therapist who created dialectical behavior therapy. And it's one of the lines I love from her. Everything is repairable. Model resilience. Oh, I'm almost at time. Okay, provide information or a preview, not reassurance. Don't repeat everything 1,000 times. Don't over-provide information. Fake it till you make it. Pretend you're cool. Normalize the emotion. Don't act like it's an emergency. Of course, you feel worried about a test. Anyone would. I know you can handle this. Give comfort, not accommodation. Remind them that you're there for them. Give hugs, give physical comfort. Hold your boundaries, hold your rules. Don't offer avoidance as an option. It will be okay. Kids are who they are. Accept the things you cannot change, like their temperament, their preferences, their taste. Change the things you can. Encourage bravery, encourage independence. Set good limits. Wisdom to know the difference. Let it go, Elsa. Let it go. Okay. I probably ran over time in terms of time for a Q&A, but I will stop there.
No worries. I think we're gonna hang around for a little longer if you have some
Sure.
time. We can
I have
answer
some
your
time.
questions. Thank you so much. I love this whole approach, so I'm really glad that you shared all of this.
Thanks.
Um, all right, so we've gotten some questions in our Q&A box, and if anyone here has more, I will try to get through as many of them as I can. But let's start with how do you balance giving your child independence without making sure he doesn't grow up to be a jerk? So, for example, right now his friends are all telling him that he can't play with girls and that girls are bad and she's not okay with this. How do we balance letting him problem solve in these cases versus telling him exactly what we think about it?
I mean, you can tell him what you think about it. It's totally okay to talk about values in a family, right? To be like, we think in our family that it's okay to play with anyone. Like, it's fine. And I think that that's also the scaffolding approach is that, if he's coming home to tell you about this, he's asking for some scaffolding, right? He's saying, like, what do I do? And then you can make suggestions of being like, you can say, that's your opinion, man. What do you want to do?
And
Who do
you can
you want to play
empower
with?
him to be able to say that, right? Like, well, I
Yeah.
disagree with you. I think
Yeah.
girls are, kind of yucky right now. And
Yeah. If he's also in a stage where he's like, I might have misunderstood the question. If he's in a like, I only play with boys, girls, we're gross. Like, also remind yourself that that's a phase. That's normal,
also true. Yeah.
right? Like that's a normal development. It's part of gender identity development. I'm not just talking in terms of understanding like, gender dysphoria or anything like that, but just normal gender identity development that happens over time is differentiating boys and girls and all of that. And like having that bit of like, these are my dudes. And also like, maybe he's a dude's dude. Maybe there's part of it you cannot change.
Yeah.
And,
But I really agree with what you said earlier about I don't think anything we're saying here is
mhm,
like don't talk to them about values or like let them
mm-mm,
swing on their own and figure everything out by themselves. There's definitely still, parenting and sharing and
yeah.
family values and all of that that you're going to communicate, but you are again letting them have the place to disagree with you, to express their own opinions
Mhm,
and maybe you help them to come to a conclusion about what it is they want to do. No, about how they feel, but
mhm,
then you can give them some autonomy about how they're now going to approach it. Like, well, let's solve this way of dealing with that conflict. Let's try this way of dealing
yeah.
with it.
And I think, there is the difference between they're coming home to talk to you and you can talk about stuff. I'm not saying you can never give an opinion to your kid on what you think they should
Yeah.
do, but there's a difference between that and watching them on the playground and the second they say, no girls allowed, you jump in and you say, all girls allowed.
I
Right? Like I think there's a big difference
want to
between
do that
that. I know, me too. Oh, it's hard. I think there's a big difference between jumping in to solve problems and planting seeds. Is that a lot of the times the conversations we're having with kids about values or skills or things like that, we have to remember that we're planting seeds. And what's really hard is we're not seeing the plant right away.
That's exactly right.
But you got to keep planting seeds because you don't know which ones are going to bloom or not. So you keep planting seeds. And that's the part you can do.
Yep.
How long it's going to take for them to grow, that's the part we cannot control.
Yep. Hard to let it be.
Also,
Um,
sometimes kids are jerks.
and, and
Right?
kids are resilient from being jerks too, just because
Yeah. Well, and I say that
doesn't
like
mean
not like sometimes we're just going to put this group of kids into the jerk pile. I'm just saying that like for every kid has jerk moments,
100%.
right? And so I think also one of the things in terms of managing parental anxiety is that it's really quick to see a kid behavior and go right into a big catastrophic label of the future as opposed to knowing that sometimes they're going to have jerk behavior and sometimes they're going to have nice behavior.
Mhm.
But if we go into like, is my kid going to be a jerk forever? Like, that's too big of a label.
For sure.
We can
Yeah.
come back to behavior. Like, okay, like there's going to be some stuff and we want to plant some seeds and we want to model really good values and we want to model inclusivity. Modeling is one of our biggest tools. But also, like, kids are jerks sometimes. My kid's a jerk to me sometimes. Doesn't mean he is a jerk. He's just a jerk to me sometimes.
Yeah. Good point. Can you talk more about the differences between snow plowing parents and those that are trying to accommodate difficulties? As a special education teacher with an ADHD kid, I try to accommodate but worry about not teaching independence. I think it's a really important point.
It's a really important point, and it's a very nuanced point, and it's one of those that might be more kid by kid and individualized for it because it really depends on the kid. And I think it is this balance of finding the working zone for them, right? And if there are
Totally.
certain accommodations that they do need because of neurodivergence, ADHD, all of that, if we have those in place, what else can we do outside of that to encourage independence, to encourage problem solving? Because, like, if we're thinking generally about ADHD, that experience of learning, that experience of, like, taking in the information and integrating it, there is a little bit of, the goldfish memory piece to it, that sometimes they do lose it. And so it is going to take longer. I think there's a big place for empathy that we can continue to encourage it. And maybe those baby steps are smaller baby steps. Maybe we got to know it's a longer piece, but we can continue trying. And I think what the balance is that knowing that if you're encouraging something and maybe they're not ready for that step that you tried to take, it doesn't mean taking it off the table. Sometimes it means breaking it down a little bit further rather
Mhm.
than giving up on it entirely.
Yes, a piece of it instead of the entire thing.
Hmm.
And I really like the concept of the working zone for that particular kid. And I think that's so important because I think sometimes parents hear, what we're saying and they're like, well, are you saying I can never help my kid on the playground? It's like, no, that might not be the approach for your kid. What is his working zone? What is her working
Yeah.
zone?
Yeah, I will say I try to use very general examples, but a lot of it is saying like, okay, where am I now and what's one step I can take,
Mhm.
right? Because like where a comfort is for any given parent, for any given kid in any age is going to vary so widely. I can't be like, for 5-year-olds do this and for 8-year-olds do this. But you can think of like, okay, like I'm definitely not ready for my kid to go to the store by themselves. That is like way, way too outside my comfort zone. I take them to a store a lot. Can they go to another aisle? And even if you're not ready for that, can I stand back and have them order at the deli counter? Right?
Yeah.
What are the steps you can take? And it's all about where am now and how can I take a step towards that? Because we don't want to get into big labels on ourselves of, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. Oh my gosh, I am a snowplow or not. But can I take a step towards something
Yeah.
instead?
Yep. Really good point. Um, my child is 5 in kindergarten, and I feel like the majority of my anxiety is related to education and him doing well in school and enjoying it. Do you have any recommendations around managing this without being overbearing or annoying to his teachers?
Um, okay. I mean, I think that figure out a limit on how often you check is still some really good advice for it, right? That what can happen with it is that there can be that little twinge of anxiety of like, oh, is this going to be a good day or not? Let me check with the teacher. Make a plan for yourself on how you can limit it and sit with the uncertainty of knowing it. And I think there is a big difference also of that anxiety of like, are they enjoying it and academically doing well? Like those can be connect and very different. One thing to remember for that, for your own self and to reassure yourself, is that sometimes kids really don't enjoy school. Remember that it's all temporal, right? Sometimes it's a phase, and sometimes it's that they don't enjoy school today, even if it feels like it's every single day. Don't make it a blanket statement. If you say, like, okay, you're a kid who just doesn't like school, well, now it's a label and they're going to fit into it every single time. Really think about making it temporal. All right, you don't like school today. We'll see.
Yeah.
And remind yourself of that, that like there's going to be good days and bad days. There's going to be academic failures and academic successes. And also to remind yourself, like, kindergarten, it's not that reliable on how kids do in kindergarten versus the rest of their life, especially if it's a boy, which I think this person said, like, boys in kindergarten,
Yes, him.
they're young. They're young.
That's right. And
Hmm.
we're not setting up patterns that's going to exist throughout the rest of
Hmm.
schooling. Sure.
Hmm.
Um, I'm so sorry, you guys. There are so many questions, and we're not going to be able to get through all of them. So I'm trying to.
We we need to brainstorm a series based on the
We
questions.
probably do, honestly. It sounds like maybe we need to have a few of these kinds of talks. So
Hmm.
definitely feel free to reach out to us if you have specific ideas or questions that we haven't answered. I think we'll take a couple more. I'm ready to send my kid to the store, and she's ready, but I think I would get in trouble with the neighbors for sending her out on her own. What do you think?
Oh, I love this question.
Yes.
Okay, first off, okay, can I go with my sassy response first?
Of course, please do.
Let him get pissed. Let him call services. There's no laws against it. I just re-upped my mandated reporter training, which means that I am a mandated reporter, have to report child abuse and neglect. And I know from this training, there's no law in New York about supervision for kids.
Mm,
There is no law about what age kids can be by themselves.
true.
Like, and I think part of it is coming back to that societal judgment place that there are going to be people who judge. There are people who judge us no matter what we do, right? It's that jerk on the playground told me I wasn't watching my kid. Okay, sir. But you remind yourself that, like, you know your kid, you know what you're ready. and the rest of it is just noise, right? That people are always going to have opinions. That's always been true since the beginning of time. Everybody has opinions. People feel a little bit more righteous in them, maybe a little bit lately. Also, know that there's a lot of people who support you. And remember, Dr. Becca said it was okay. Not Dr. Becky. Dr. Becca said it was okay.
I love that, Dr. Becca. I will say also that Let Grow, and I really recommend that everyone go to their website, letgrow.org, I think.
Org.
Org.
Hmm.
Specifically talks about this, and they have a little card that you can print out that says, I know my
My
kid is out by
child has,
themselves.
yeah,
Yes,
my
and
child has my
I
permission. Here's my phone
exactly.
number.
He's okay, and let
Yeah.
him be, basically. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, a parent is asking about internet safety because in his school's tech class, they're teaching kids how to do Google searches, which really ignited her anxiety. She just spent the morning setting up a user profile for her son on the computer and listing out the websites that are school related that he's allowed to visit. Is that overkill? He's in second grade. Like,
Okay.
sort of
So
parenting
I'm
about being on the internet.
okay. So I'm a Luddite, and
I think
my
that's the
area
third
of
time now
parent.
that you've said this.
Well, take me with a grain of salt too. Know the biases you're bringing, right?
Yes.
And I will say that my parental anxiety is about content and the internet, and it is the place to be more overprotective,
Yes.
right? And that I think when it comes to protecting kids in terms of screens and access to the internet, what's really important in it is letting them know that that you can't surprise a kid with the fact that you've been monitoring them. That's really breaking down trust. Like, be honest that you're monitoring. And I think it's one where it makes a lot of sense because the risk in terms of how internet, social media, carrying around a screen with you everywhere in terms of risk to your mental health is actually much stronger than when we're talking about like the big scary risks out there of letting them go to the store. That actually has a stronger risk. And so I think that you want to protect from content on the internet and also like remembering that we only know so much. We only know what we know, right? And so there's always going to be something, and know that you have the capabilities to handle that when it comes up. That kids are, since before the internet, kids have been notoriously great at figuring out ways to skirt the rules. And parents, find a way to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Find a way to talk about it and find a way to teach them internet safety habits.
Hmm.
You can talk about how there are things on the internet that are really meant for adults that you're going to,
Yeah.
use whatever tools you can to, make sure their
Yeah.
content is for kids, but sometimes it doesn't always work that way. And
Hmm.
so you want to help them to know what's safe and what's not safe, what's
Yeah.
appropriate and what's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Um,
And and I really recommend it on a family computer over other devices,
Agreed. Agreed.
right?
Something
Like
in a
it's a
central
family
location,
computer.
not in their rooms with the door closed.
Hmm.
Yes.
That everyone has access, that it's just part of it, the way anything else, like the way that the TV is part of the living room.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, just do one more. Um, my son, who's age 7, has ADHD and anxiety. He chooses not to participate in competitive academic activities in school, like math competitions, and his school allows him to not participate. Should that parent push back on this and push him to do some of these things that he says he doesn't want
I wonder what it means in terms of the school accommodating in that kind of situation. Because, like, what we don't want is for it to be in those situations like escape route. Like, if he is allowed to leave the classroom and all of that, I really would push back against this. Of he should have to stay for these events, that's the expectation. And also, there's only so far we can force in it. Like, are we going to physically take his hand and draw out the five? We're not going to be able to do that, right? And so we
to.
can set up the expectations in those kinds of situations of what's expected, right? It's the same way, sometimes with sleep, we can tell a kid to go to bed. We can't tell them to go to sleep, right? Because we can't force their brain to shut down and enter the REM cycle. But we can tell them that it's time to go to bed. And so thinking about how you can push back with the school of like, okay, well, I still want it to be handed to him. I want him to sit there. I want him to be bored during it. I want it still to be collected so that we're not accommodating and encouraging avoidance of it, even if we're not going to be able to physically get him to do the problem.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I would want to know what it is that we're allowing him to avoid. Like there's one thing to, it's an extra optional math competition for kids who really like math and he doesn't like math. Are we
Mhm.
allowing him to avoid the thing because he just doesn't like math or because he's anxious and he actually is quite good at math and he would like to do it, but he can't like handle the anxiety of being in the competition, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like that's really important too.
Mhm.
So many more questions
Oh my God, so many
here
more
to
questions.
answer. Definitely, please feel free to reach out to us. Hello@smallbrooklyn.com if you would like to set up a consultation with Rebecca. She's fantastic at that. She's better at it than I am, frankly. But we are, our whole team is here to help. So if you
Mhm.
do have specific questions about your family or about your parenting, your anxiety or your kids' anxiety, we are here to help. So
Yeah.
please do reach out. It sounds like we are going to have more webinars like this if Becca is
Yeah.
willing. And
I I really think also like feedback from people like what's the deep dive you'd want to go into so that you can plan for that because then it's a way of really reaching so many people because I don't know if everybody can see how many people are on here. Look at how many people are feeling the same thing. Look
totally,
at this community.
totally.
Look at how other people want to be doing this and want to be pushing for it. And like a big thing we didn't even talk about is like finding community that want to push together and how that can be so helpful for it. So like if there's stuff that
I
we can cover more generally, that'd be great.
agree. We had, I think, like 190 registrants for this talk. It is more than anything we've ever done before. So clearly it's hitting a nerve, and we want to be able to send this information and help you guys out. So feel free to send us feedback as well. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Becca, for all the great information. We have another webinar that's coming up in April, also with Park Slope parents, where our therapist, Maddie Lawler, is going to talk about the specific ways that we can address different psychological issues, whether it's individual therapy or exposure therapy, executive function coaching, parent therapy, play therapy. So come back and join us again for that one. And as I said, always feel free to reach out to Small Brooklyn for help as needed. Thanks again to Park Slope Parents for having us and for helping us to get the word out, and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.